Are you looking for a way to earn extra money, to advance your career, and to prepare for retirement? Well, joining the National Guard as a PA or an NP might be the surprisingly great option that can help you achieve those goals. Hi, it's Michelle with the Medicine Couch. My goal in this channel is to help practicing PAs and NPs find those great opportunities in and around medicine. So stay tuned to find out what it is that PAs and NPs actually do in the Guard, what the requirements are to join, the commitments you have to be prepared for, and the benefits that you'll receive.
Good afternoon. I am Mark Latta. I've been a physician assistant since 1997, a long time ago.
Kind of briefly, what's been your career path since you graduated?
During my second year of clinicals, I decided that the surgical subspecialties interested me more. So I applied to Montefiore Medical Center, which has the very first PA residency. That residency was in general surgery. So I completed that program. I stayed in the New Jersey, New York area and practiced in cardiac surgery for about 2 years. Then I relocated to Virginia, where I practiced in general surgery. And I also was on faculty at Eastern Virginia Medical School. And then I went to Richmond, Virginia. I did orthopedic surgery for a little while, orthopedic spine, and felt that cardiac surgery was still my love. So I transitioned back to cardiac surgery and have been in cardiac surgery since then.
And so, did you go to PA school through the military, or was that just completely civilian?
It was actually civilian. I went to Duke University PA program, and during that same time, during that second year, I remember recruiters coming to the class. I didn't pay much attention to it. But then when I moved to Virginia on faculty at Eastern Virginia Medical School, I remember it being a great opportunity for PAs. So I had the recruiters to actually come speak to my students. During that time, I think I had a couple of students that were interested, but this was 2001. So we know 9/11 happened. And I can remember being in the middle of teaching a physical examination class when we saw the towers coming down, and something just motivated me. And so that same recruiter, I called her. And within 6 months, I was enlisted, and I joined secondary to 9/11. And it's been a great decision, and I don't think I would change it any other way. So I've been enlisted since January 2nd, 2002.
So when you say you enlisted, then does that mean like you enlisted to become a full time in the military, or do you mean like enlisted into like the Guard?
I chose the National Guard route, which means I was commissioned as an officer into the National Guard. So I'm considered a M-Day soldier, which is still active duty, but I'm not a daily soldier.
When you go into the military, like any PAs or NPs are watching this, if they're going to go into the Guard, do you automatically come in as an officer?
Yeah, from a National Guard standpoint, you are commissioned as an officer. You come in automatically as a second lieutenant, unless you have previous military experience. Because if you were enlisted, then you have the opportunity, based on time that was previously served, that you could actually have a higher rank. But because I did not have any prior military experience, I came in as a second lieutenant.
That was going to be one of my questions, is you don't have to have prior military experience to join the Guard.
Absolutely not. Kind of like being a PA. In the old days as PAs, we all had professions before we went to PA school. It wasn't a direct thing. So now you have people that want to have a regular life, so to speak, working in their daily jobs. So again, I work as a PA daily, but I bring that same service to the National Guard.
Do you have to have any kind of specific training? Like, are they looking for people who know emergency medicine or trauma or surgery, or can anybody who works in any specialty join the Guard?
Yeah, any specialty can join. The basic requirements to join National Guard, obviously, you have to have a bachelor's degree, plus completion of an accredited physician assistant program, certification through the National Commissioning for PAs, the NCCPA, age 21 years to 42 years old, which is a little bit different from the active. Active is 17 to 35. Actually, with some subspecialties that are in big need, you can be a little bit older than that and you would just get a waiver for it. And students that are graduating within 6 months can qualify.
Okay. What are some of the benefits? Like why would you want to join the Guard?
Well, again, for me personally, it was to do my part to this nation. And I think that was the driving force. However, we do not frown upon others that want to join for some of the benefits. If you are an active duty physician assistant, you have the health professionals loan repayment, which is up to $240,000. It has a lifetime cap. With the reserve in itself, it depends on the climate and the time, it varies, but you can get up to $60,000 for loan repayment. Beyond that, we do have medical and dental care through TRICARE while you're on duty on the weekends. You have $400,000 in life insurance. You're also able to apply insurance for your dependents as well. as long as you're enlisted. Discounted and tax-free grocery and shopping privileges at post exchanges and commissaries. We have free military air flights based on space availability. Like, there are certain bases where there's a weekly flight to Italy, things of that nature that you can join on. We have recreation facilities that are on military installations that you use for free. And we do have a retirement pension plan, a completion of 20 years of part-time service. And then the other benefit for those that want to continue with education, there's also opportunities for continued education because the National Guard does pay state tuition.
If a PA wanted to go back and go get a doctorate, you're saying that it's potential you could have some tuition reimbursement for that?
The state tuition usually is for bachelor's type degrees, but there
Okay.
are some advanced degrees that do qualify, not all. But there are also specialty training. Like, again, I went to Fort Rucker, Alabama and became a aeromedical PA. That's above and beyond being just the 65 Delta. So I was able to go to a 6-week course there and learn aeromedical training. In addition to that, we have orthopedic training. The military now does have a doctorate program in orthopedic specialty. However, again, you will have to become active duty for that.
And by the way, we keep saying PA because you're a PA, I'm a PA, but does all of this that we're talking about apply to nurse practitioners as well?
So I can't speak a lot to the nurse practitioner, but it's very similar. It's based really on the need of the military at the time.
Yeah, but they're able to join the military and the reserves.
Correct.
Once I get enlisted, what happens? Like, do I go through any kind of like boot camp or training?
I'll just go over kind of like a description of really what we're doing. Just as in civilian world, as PAs, we actually serve to fill the gap. We cover the gaps that may arise at each level of treatment, whether it be emergency medicine, whether it be primary care, whether it be surgery. If you're guard, you're serving just the weekend soldiers. We stand ready to respond for anything that threatens our community, our state, and the nation. One of the unique things about the National Guard versus the General Reserves, we have both state and national duties. So we will still be the heroes that are serving our natural communities, or we can be called upon by the President of the United States to serve the nation. So medical professional officers are required to complete an initial military orientation and training course that lasts about 26 days at Fort Sam Houston, Texas. Your original commitment in itself as an M-Day soldier, we're 1 week in a month and 2 weeks out of the summer. We have a 15-day, what we call annual training. In most cases, our drills are Saturday and Sunday. Sometimes you'll have a larger, which is Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but that's only once or twice a year.
You were talking about the state and the national. So each state has their own guard, but then is there a national guard, or is that just the reserves when we start talking national?
Yeah, so the difference is we have the National Guard and then you have reserves. So you have an Army Reserve, you have an Army National Guard, you have an Air National Guard, you have Air Reserve, which is through the Air Force, and the Navy has reserves as well. Reserves training, you are federal, only for national incidents, war, and things of that nature. However, as a National Guard, we originally started as individual militias and it became a National Guard. So as a National Guard, we have responsibility for our individual state. Every state has a National Guard. For floods and hurricanes, things of that nature, we would be activated first. However, in the atmosphere of something national, we also can be called upon by the president to be activated from a national standpoint. So that's the unique thing about the National Guard. We have a two component, state and nation.
So when you go in to join the guard, you don't really choose between the state and national. You're just joining the National Guard, but you are going to be assigned locally in your state for the most part. Like you're
you are in your state.
okay.
And my commitment will be the state that I am commissioned in.
Is there a certain number of years that you have to commit to when you enlist?
Actually, there is. So there's a couple of ways that we look at it. When you actually join, your overall is an 8-year commitment. And that can be achieved in several ways. It can be as little as 3 to 6 years. And then we have what's called an IRR, which is an inactive ready reserve. So if you do a 3-year contract, you would do your 3 years, but you still would owe the nation 5 years. And that would be inactive, which means you don't have to drill, you don't have to do annual training, but in the case of need, you could be called back.
Okay.
So it is an 8-year commitment overall. Again, active either 3 to 6 years, or you can do your full 8.
That 3 to 6 years is a long difference. What makes the difference between whether you serve 3 or 6 on the active side?
Well, it comes down to, your individual contract, because
Oh,
again, sometimes with the bonuses and special pay, like, when you join, some of the benefits, you can get up to $60,000 in special pay, which is paid over 20,000 per year for a 3-year commitment. You can have, a longer commitment of the 6 year, which the bonuses or your sign-on bonus could be different. So it all depends on, how you want to come in.
you have the flexibility to control that based on what you
Oh
want.
yeah.
So that kind of then answers the question about the pay then. So it basically comes to about 20,000 a year that you're on the active side.
No, no. So
Oh,
what I just talked about was actually, your special pay.
oh,
You can
okay.
get up to $60,000. This is in addition to your regular pay. So if you sign on with your special pay or your general commitment, you can get up to $60,000, which is paid at 20,000 per year for a 3-year commitment. Now, during the same time, we also have accession bonuses. Qualified physician assistants are eligible for 37,500 bonus for a 3-year obligation, or 60,000 for a 4-year initial obligation. After that, once you've served your time, there's also retention bonuses, which can range from 10 to 15,000 for a 2 to 3 year commitment, or up to 20 to 25 for 4 and 6 year commitments. As physician assistants, we also have what's called incentive pay, which is given $5,000 annually. Now, your base pay is based off of your rank. It's just federal. Which is the same thing as if you were active duty enlisted. And I can't really quote peer salary, because again, there are some people with prior military
Mhm.
experience, so your pay would be higher than mine, who comes in as commissioned officer, and so it's based on a federal guideline.
Okay. So that was a whole lot, and I'm sure it makes perfect sense in your head. But for those of us who don't understand, let me kind of recap. So you have that base rate. You're getting paid a certain X number of dollars per year just for being in the Guard. And that
Correct.
is determined based on your rank and prior military experience, those kind of things. And then there are these other bonuses that you talked about that will be determined based on like how long of a active commitment you sign up for, and I'll just say other things because I don't know what determines the other, but there are other ways to get even more pay, is what you're saying, different
Correct.
bonuses along the way. Okay. So, on average, in general, could you give somebody a rough idea of how much per year somebody could reasonably expect to make serving in the Guard?
Actually, in the National Guard versus active duty, your pay will be less, because again, you're only doing 1 week in a month and 2 weeks out of the year. So with no experience, coming in as a 002, which is a commissioned officer at a second lieutenant, you make less than 2 years about $4,000. And as you increase in time and rank, your pay will increase. So let's just look at, if you become a captain, and that's usually within 3 to 4 years, you'll go from 3,000 to up to 6,000. And then as you get higher in rank, your pay does increase. Now, as a PA, you're looking at that base pay. However, again, we talked about having the opportunity that you will have accession bonuses, special pay, things of that nature. And so that means there's that bonus that's added to. And I spoke of, let's say, the accession bonus or retention bonus of $20,000 to $25,000. So you would then add that to your base pay. And then for me, the biggest benefit is retirement. If you stay in for the 20 years, which I think is the biggest bang for the buck, not only are you serving your nation, you do get repaid for that. And that's through insurance. And when you get to the point of retirement, healthcare is the biggest issue. You have TRICARE for life once you retire, which is at 20 years, and you're taken care of. You and your family is taken care of. We also have USAA as our insurance for home needs, for home loans, for car insurance, which is a huge benefit. Nobody can really compete with USAA. And you're still able to use our military PX. You're still able to do your grocery shopping if you're near a base that has it. And so those benefits over the long run, which for me, I think is the biggest thing.
And so when you do your 20 years in the Guard and you get all those other benefits you talked about, do you actually get retirement pay as well, or is it just those benefits?
Yes, you do get retirement pay.
Nice. Let's talk about like what the work is you're doing. You have a commitment of 1 weekend a month, and you talk about these drills that usually happen like Saturday and Sunday. And then you have that 2 week commitment. What does it look like when you go on these drills? Like, are you sitting in a clinic all day waiting for people to come in? Or are you out in the field where they're drilling? What are you doing that
Correct.
weekend?
All right, so each drill weekend depends on your occupational specialty. For me, I am a 65 Delta Mike 3, which makes me an aviation physician assistant. I work with flight surgeon and aviators. But if you are not a flight surgeon, you are a 65 Delta, and you can be assigned to the medical detachment for an individual state. You can be assigned to field units, so your responsibilities would vary. So if you are
Okay.
assigned to a field unit, then you serve as the primary medical officer. You will have combat medics that are assigned to you, and you do early morning sick call. You will deal with field injuries, more like an urgent care, so to speak, but you're
Okay.
assigned directly to your soldiers. For me, as an aviation physician assistant, I am responsible for all our aviators. Just make sure they're healthy enough to fly, their crew members as well.
Just so people have an idea in their mind, you're not out there in the field crawling through mud with the other soldiers. You're in a clinic environment waiting for people to come to you,
No,
or
well, if you are attached to the state medical detachment, then you are in a physical building. Our soldiers come through and you are reviewing their charts, you're performing physicals, you're doing sick call, you assess the soldier. However, if you are assigned to a, again, field unit, no, you're out in the field with the
oh, okay.
soldiers and you will have your clinic set up, within the field, however you choose to do so, so to speak. And the beauty of it, you do have the opportunity to be, when I say a normal soldier, we go to the firing range just as everybody else does.
Oh, okay.
We go through, we call table exercises for our 68 whiskeys, which are our combat medics. So we do all the field training just the same. But if you're attached to a detachment, yes, you are in a physical clinic.
All right, interesting. And so, do you have to meet certain go through physical tests and requirements like the regular everyday soldiers do?
Correct. So every year we have annual what's called an ACFT, which is a combat fitness test. It incorporates things like sit-ups, push-ups, 2 mile run, deadlifts, things of that nature. Some units will have PTs part of your normal weekend, and there are other times where you are required to maintain your health because you have to pass this test every year. So again, the big picture is we're preparing to protect our country, and
Okay.
so when you are deployed, you have to be physically fit.
What is the 2 weeks a year thing? Is that kind of the same thing but more, or do you do something different on those 2 weeks?
Yeah, so 2 weeks are different again, depending on the unit you're assigned to. From an aviation standpoint, if I were to do my annual training with my primary aviation units, we are flying every day. We're getting our hours in. We're practicing litter carriage. We're practicing evacuation. We're practicing all those things that we would do in the theater of war. That's when we get to do our annual arms training. We get to go to the range. We do, special things like that. Unique thing about Delaware, we have sister countries or sister places. And so that our annual training, this past training, my unit was in Hawaii. Prior to that, they were in Puerto Rico.
That's your regular commitment every year is the 1 weekend a month and then the 2 weeks a year for that. But when you talked about deployment earlier, then you have to be ready to deploy. What does that mean? And what are some examples of what deployment could be?
If you are assigned to an individual unit as a PA and your unit is assigned to a deployment, you would deploy with that unit. As an individual, you can be deployed with other units. So, like again, I am with the Aviation of Delaware, but if there is a need for the Illinois Aviation Department, I could be deployed with that unit and still do the same duty. From a standpoint of a physician assistant, our general deployments are minimum 6 months.
So you're saying that if the military needs it, if the government needs it, you potentially could be called up to be sent over to like Iraq or sent somewhere else in the country. And if that happens, you're saying that you're there for a minimum of 6 months and potentially longer?
As a physician assistant, yes, our job is to take care of our soldiers wherever they are. And
Yeah.
so if you're assigned to an individual unit that is, again, deployed to Iraq, you would be deployed with that unit. Now, the difference is PAs may not have to stay the entire year. You will have a minimum of 6 months unless there's a
Okay.
special assignment that's made. There are voluntary deployments. I can go to a site right now and voluntarily deploy 90 days to a year, whatever I'm kind of deciding to a certain degree. But you are responsible for taking care of your soldiers in that deployment.
Now, is that something that happens very often, or like how many times have you been deployed?
It'll vary, depends on again how you're assigned. I've been blessed. I've been called up twice, but I was not deployed. First time I was at Fort Benning getting ready to go, and the physician assistant that was already in country decided that he wanted to stay, so I was sent back home. So it's kind of I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse because I have not been deployed in my now 21 years. However, I have colleagues that have been deployed several times. So again, just kind of based on where you've been assigned, what units. Obviously, if you're assigned to a field unit, there's a more of an increased chance of deployment versus being in a medical detachment or being attached to a specific aviation unit. And I've been in 3 different states, and I think the timing sometimes has either helped or hurt me. Like when I left from Virginia and went to New Jersey, the unit that I left was deployed, and I just wasn't with them anymore. And then when I left New Jersey, coming to Delaware, aviation was already deployed, so I was with the medical detachment until they got back, and then I came back into aviation. So a lot of it
Yeah.
has to do with timing.
So what happens to your civilian job? Your surgeon relies on you being there. What happens when you
Yeah.
get called up to get deployed?
We have amazing employers out there. We have some that might not be, but I've been blessed to have worked with great hospitals and physicians that understand that my commitment to the military. Now, by law, I can't lose my job. So
Right.
if I'm deployed, when I come back, they still have to keep my job. Now, my individual position may not be there, but I can't not have a job. So I'm protected in that manner.
If you're in the Guard, if you do end up getting called up and having to get deployed overseas or somewhere for 6 months to a year, then you still will be making a good salary because you'll be making what a full-time military PA would be making. But there's a good chance it's not going to be as much as your civilian pay, but that civilian job will be waiting for you when you return. So there is that
Correct.
trade-off that you have to think about. PAs have a high level of respect, I feel like, in the military. They work very autonomously. It's almost a different kind of feel to it than working in civilian. Do you agree with that? Have you experienced that?
Exactly. The military can't afford to have full time doctors with the number of soldiers that you have, mid level practitioners. We have become the backbone to the military. In maintaining that health of soldiers, they really appreciate you because as soldiers and aviators, and most of them, they just want to do their duty. Unlike sometimes in the civilian world where you'll see patients that come in and might not necessarily want to go back to work. So they give you every excuse to keep you from going to work. Soldiers want to be soldiers. Now, the autonomy we have is great, but we also have our MDs, our dentists, and people of that nature that we can collaborate with easily. So it's very collegial from that standpoint.
Any last thoughts about if you think PAs and NPs should consider the National Guard and kind of just your final whys?
Overall, I think, again, as we just spoke of, I think that our soldiers really appreciate the care that you give them. From the retirement standpoint, again, after finishing my commitment, I'm still here because for me to go on the weekend and do what I do, I think is a beautiful thing. Now, I miss certain things on weekends that I want to do, but it's just one weekend out of the month. And now that I'm older, I realize the benefit that's going to be more important. So for me, the military is it's just so worth it. The camaraderie of the people that you work with, I don't get on a daily basis. I have a great team of all the hospitals I've worked at, but they don't match the teammates, as I say. The downside would be one, you do have time away from your family. The potential deployment, that's very important. But like I said, I've been blessed or not blessed that I have not been deployed, but I know people that have been deployed several times. But you can't come in thinking you're not going to get deployed. It's great to come in for the money, for the free education, but no, there's a trade-off. And I think you should be eager for that trade-off. I definitely applaud anyone that is interested. Go to your recruiter. Your AMED recruiter is a little bit different than your regular recruiter. AMED is the Army Medical Department, and ask those specific questions. And again, every year things change as far as school loans, your bonus, and things of that nature. But it's well worth it. But they're eager to have medical providers because, again, if you look at the number of soldiers across the world, there's not as many medical providers. So they will bend over backwards to get you in.
Well, thank you so much, Major Latta, and I appreciate your service to our country, and I appreciate you joining us today and giving us all this great information.
Not a problem, Michelle. I really thank you for giving me the time today. There's so many things we can do as physician assistants. And so the National Guard, the Army Reserves, the Navy, the Air Force, I'm sure everyone will welcome you. Even if you've already been practicing for 10 or 15 years, if you're in that age area, come on, there's a lot of other things you can do.
Obviously, being in the Guard is not right for everyone, and it does come with some serious potential commitments, but it's also an opportunity that provides lots of benefits. Of course, as Mark pointed out, it's also a great way to serve our country and to help our soldiers. But if this isn't the right opportunity for you, you might want to check out these playlists here to find one that is. Thanks for joining me today. Take care, stay sane, and I'll see you next time on the Medicine Couch. Bye.